Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace. Strengthening the saints against Islam's assault on North America.
Two women finished their shopping and headed back to their car to stash away their newfound treasures before having lunch at the cafe. In the parking lot, they came upon a dead cat. Being animal lovers, they covered it with tissue paper and scooped it up into one of their shopping bags, intending to take it home to give it a proper burial. Arriving at their car, they stashed their shopping bags into the trunk, fearing, though, that the expired feline would cause the car to lose its new car smell. They decided to leave the cat on top of the trunk in the shopping bag. Finding a window seat at the cafe, they were afforded a view of the restaurant and the parking lot and their car and the shopping bag containing the day's good deed. Not long into their BLT sandwich, they observed a woman approaching their car. She looked left, then looked right, and then snatched the shopping bag from the car and walked quickly into the cafe. The catnapper took a seat at the table next to theirs. Speechless, they watched as the thief casually ordered her lunch, then nonchalantly placing the shopping bag on her lap to survey her find. The two Good Samaritans had lost all interest in their BLTs and were smiling from ear to ear, waiting in anticipation of the reaction of the catnapper. The single lady removed the tissue paper. Her eyes widened, and she began to make a sort of gasping noise. The noise grew as the bag slid from her lap and hit the floor with a thud. The waiter noticed that the lady was wheezing and clutching her upper chest, and he called for someone to call 911. He then proceeded to administer the Heimlich maneuver. A crowd quickly gathered, while our two ladies remained riveted to their chairs. In no time, the ambulance arrived, and in minutes, the lady was strapped to a gurney. Two well-trained paramedics steered her to the waiting ambulance, while a third scooped up her belongings. The last they saw of this distressed cat burglar was her behind the ambulance doors and the shopping bag perched on her stomach. Well, what a thing to behold. Well, folks, we are now in a new year. Have you ever made some mistakes? I'm sure we could look back in our life and say, boy, that was dumb. No doubt we saw some funny things. The Bible says in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, "But this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth into those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus." So what does it mean to forget the things which are behind? Well, it doesn't mean that we forget all the lessons and the pain and the happy moments and all that type of stuff. What it says is, don't live in the past. You know, some people dwell in the past, and they dwell in the pain of the past, and they can't move forward. Don't live there. The pain that was there, it either serve your mistakes and your pain could turn into stumbling blocks, or they could become stepping stones. I believe the choice really is yours, how you choose to let it be. But don't live there. Don't live in the past. Some may live in the past that have victories that they've had, and that's what they cling to. Well, those are great. Fantastic. But don't live there. You can't live in yesterday. You have to live in the present. And you can't really live too much in the future because we're not there yet. But you got to let those things go. Let them be behind us. But reach forth unto the things that are before us. And that's where we are. I love this time of the year, January 1st, the beginning of a new year. An opportunity to have a new clean slate. I always mention this, and I love what Charles Spurgeon used to say. No matter your past, your future spotless. I love that. No matter what happened back there, mistakes, whatever, we've got a chance now to make a new start. I remember as a kid growing up, and there were times that I had blown my testimony with my friends, things that I said that I shouldn't have said, or things that I listened to that I shouldn't have listened to, things I participated in that I shouldn't have participated in as a Christian. And I blew my testimony. Sometimes I'd wish for a new beginning, wish that, maybe we could move and go to a new area, a new place. And sometimes that was going on in my life because as a missionary kid, we did move a lot. And sometimes I'd think, I wish I could start all over again with new friends and start with a clean testimony. And it wasn't long, I get that opportunity. It wasn't long that I'd mess that up. And I learned. Sometimes you just got to eat crow and eat humble pie and humble yourself and say to your friends, I blew it. As a Christian, I shouldn't have done those things. I wasn't the example that I ought to have been. And I want to share something with you that's important because I'm concerned about your soul. And even though I'm not a perfect man myself, I want you to know the truth. And so sometimes we just have to be honest, but we need to press forward and reach forth unto those things which are before. You got to be looking forward, thinking. What if, imagine this with me, what if somehow by mistake we had intercepted a celestial memo? What if somehow we had discovered a memorandum that God had sent to his angels? And he said to Gabriel, on December 31st, at the end of this year, I want you to come to the throne room and bring your trumpet with you. Because on that day, I'm going to bring my children home. What if we knew that the rapture and the return of the Lord was set for a certain time? What if we knew that we had a year before the return of the Lord? What if we knew that his coming was then, and we had a year to make right and get things in order for the Lord's return? Imagine if we had that opportunity. I wonder, what would we do with that year? Honestly, what would we do? I imagine perhaps we'd spend less time gossiping, less time complaining. Maybe we would have less time in front of the TV, just wasting our time there. Maybe perhaps if we knew we only had a year left, we'd spend less time in recreational pursuits. Maybe we'd say, do we really need to spend our time doing this sport or doing this recreation? I only got a year left. Maybe we'd spend less time lusting after certain job positions and career opportunities. Maybe if we only had a year left, maybe we'd spend less time, we'd quit fighting and bickering over things that really don't matter. Maybe some people that we had relationships with that had been harmed because of fighting and words that were said that had cut deeply. Maybe we would take that year and mend that relationship and maybe forgive one another. Mend relationships that have been longing to be mended. Maybe because we only had a year left, we'd quit some bad habits, things that we'd been pledging and promising that one day we'd quit. We've been promising it long ago, but never got around to doing it. Maybe we would spend our time more and start sharing the gospel and preaching the message of hope and salvation to our friends and family that we have been putting off. And let's admit, folks, witnessing to the ones that we love the most are probably the hardest thing to do. I'll spend some time here in some broadcasts in the future talking about why that is hard, how we can maybe overcome some of those difficulties. And if we only had a year left, if we knew that the Lord's return was coming, maybe we would actually attend every church service that our church has for us instead of being a casual attender. I mean, after all, we know that we stand before God in the judgment soon. Maybe we'd want to have a better record on our hand. Maybe we'd spend that year actually reading our Bible and getting through our Bible, reading it through the year. Now, folks, I mean, this is the first day of the year. And this is the greatest opportunity if you're going to make a pledge and determination. I'm going to read my Bible through this year. This is the first day to get that started. Hey, you know what? This coming Sunday, if you show up at church, you've already got perfect attendance for the year. But if you miss this Sunday, you've already blown that opportunity for perfect attendance for this year. If you only had a year left, imagine if we knew that was going to be the situation. Would we read our Bible this year? Would we maybe pray more faithfully? Maybe would we want to love our spouse more than we've ever loved them before? Loved our kids, our parents, those who are close to us? Will we mend those relationships and do our very best to be the best son, the best dad, the best husband, the best wife that we've ever been? I think so. I think those are the things we'd want to spend our time doing. Again, forget those things that are behind. They're in the past. We can't change them. We can grow from them. We can get better or bitter. Choice is ours. But reaching forth to the things that are ahead. We've got this chance this year to make it a better year. And I think one of the things that will make it better is that if we ourselves make the changes in our life that need to make us better. And what will those things be? Well, those are the things: getting into the Word, finding what God desires of our life and how it needs to be, and shaping ourselves. Paul says, I press towards the mark. What is that mark? I believe I know. I may be wrong, but this is supposition on my side, but I think that mark is the image of God. That the image of God would be upon us. That's part of the sanctification of the saints as we grow and walk in the Spirit, and we want to become more like Christ, having His image in us. In other words, when people see us, they see God in us, that He shines through us. And I think that's what the Bible says, to work out your salvation, to let the work of the salvation of God that's in our life, to let it work out and to be seen and personified in our life, that it may be made manifest, made known to others that we have Christ in us. I think that's the mark. And Paul says, I press towards that mark. This one thing I do, I forget the past, I'm reaching forward, and I press towards the mark. May that mark, may the image of Christ be seen in us this year more than it was last year. Then I think we can finish the year with our head up and giving thanksgiving to God. That's it for today. Happy New Year. And join us again tomorrow at the corner of Truth and Courage.